Spurs got away with the win in this one. We all knew that when the third quarter hit, the Grizzlies were going to take over, right? We knew. And the Grizzlies are just overall a better team, even when they don't have Ja. If we don't have Wemby and they don't have Ja, I still think they're a better team, right? They're playoff bound. They're ready to get things popping, right? So they're a better team, more cohesive, played together quite well, this season, obviously. And they do a really great job in their rotations, and they have a lot of depth, and they play everybody, right? Like, that's one thing about the Grizzlies is that they play absolutely everyone on their roster, and they can afford to do that. And I think the Spurs could do it to some extent, but they just haven't done it as much. But kudos to Mitch Johnson for not giving Chris Paul too many minutes, right? I thought that his minutes were impactful when he was out there, and I thought he did a good job of making sure he didn't play too often. Starting lineup still dumb, still doesn't make a lot of sense, but you finish with the players you should have finished with, right? So I was happy how the game finished and him actually just relying on those guys. Another thing too is how strong the Spurs started off. I'm wondering, this could be completely out there, but I'm wondering if that Popovich talking to did anything. You guys think it did anything? I don't know. It could have did something. It could have possibly did something. But overall, I thought we played hard. Obviously, the Grizzlies were going to come back, right? That was going to be inevitable in this game. When you're lacking a center, it's going to be very difficult to win it. But hey, De'Aaron Fox had the ball in his hands at the very end. That's what mattered most. Everyone knew that he should be taking that shot at the end, and he did. Phenomenal shot, and we won it. We walked away with a W. You love to see it. So with that being said, one thing that has stood out to me, and I've been consistent with this, okay? So like I said, giving love to Keldon Johnson. I don't know if I didn't, I'll say it again. Giving love to Keldon Johnson. I thought that he was really great at the end of the game, and I thought that he should have been in the game at the end of this one, right? I think, honestly, with the personnel that we have left right now, I think he should probably be in the game every time, right? Now, if we have Wemby, obviously that changes. I don't think that at that point. But right now, how we're constructed, yeah, put him in the game at the end. Yeah, sure. Makes sense. You had two great defenders out there in Steph Castle and Sochan. Keldon Johnson held his own for the most part, right? But overall, I thought the team did pretty well at the end of this one. So with that being said, one thing that stood out to me, though, is all the love from Twitter. And no disrespect to the chat, because I love you guys, okay? But it's extra love for Sochan, and he doesn't necessarily or often gets it. So you know what? I'm gonna give it to him. Now I know that a lot of people will say, "Oh, you always praise him," but you know what? Now that our ears are out and we're listening, we're in a good mood, we're paying attention. I'm gonna throw some stats at you about how great Sochan actually is. Okay, just bear with me. I want to talk about how great he actually is, because statistically, I rarely care what the stats look like after games for Sochan, right? He's just not that type of player. When the Spurs are actually playoff bound, I'm not expecting Sochan to give us 20 plus points and, for him to have 20 steals in a game. I'm not expecting any of that, right? I think the rebounds will always show, how impactful he was. I think that that's true. But as far as steals and blocks, he's such a great defender, but he's not one that gets a ton of crazy stats after games. He's going to be one of those impactful guys that if you're paying attention, you see how great he actually is, right? I'm a big nerd. I've been playing a lot of Marvel Rivals, all right? He is like playing tank, right? And if you're playing tank, you're doing a lot of the dirty work. You're taking on a lot of the heat from the opposing team there. You're doing a lot of things that doesn't show up in the stat sheet. And that's how Sochan is. And you only pay attention once you actually get in the playoffs. This is the reason why a lot of guys that we look back on fondly, we can say, wow, they were super impactful at the time. But then you look at their stats and it's like, well, how were they impactful? Manu Ginobili is a great example. My favorite player of all time. I'm not saying Sochan. People always jump to this. I'm not saying Sochan's going to be Manu. Okay, good God. But Manu Ginobili, my favorite player of all time. You go back and you look at his stats. Our memory, if we just came up with some stats, we would have assumed he scored 30 a night, but he didn't. Right? He just didn't. You can look at his stats. A lot of years his percentages weren't that impressive. But if you watched him, if you paid attention, if you saw those big games, that's what stands out to you. And you're like, oh yeah, he was impactful, obviously, right? And I think that Sochan is going to be like that, but even lesser so because Manu was pretty flashy, right? Like he was pretty awesome to watch all the time. And Sochan is a little bit more, yeah, I don't know. Unless you really love the game, I wouldn't say Sochan is like super fun to watch, right? But with that being said, I want to go through a few things, all right? I want to go through some stats that we went over before, but for some reason, people tend to forget it. So we'll just start with this one. Top 10 enrollment impact. Now, the reason why I think this is super important, so in the NBA right now, I think that he is third. Last time we checked, he was third, right behind Karl Anthony Towns in the NBA as far as pick and roll finishers. So I'm assuming he's still high up there. I mean, he hasn't been messing up in that regard, so I'm assuming he's still top 5. But he was top 3. But this is top enrollment impact, and you can see Sochan is top 10 in the entire NBA. And this is from a month ago, so it could have changed. But like I said, over the course of the last month, I thought he's been really great in that role, and that's important. And the reason why that's important is, I mean, first off, it's just important in general, but specifically for this team, you have De'Aaron Fox, who is a very good pick and roll player, and he plays off of it exceptionally well, right? So does Castle. He's not necessarily there yet, but he does a good job of it as well. And Chris Paul, we know that he takes advantage of it every chance that he gets. And I thought that Wemby and Sochan looked pretty good together this year. And, you just have a lot to play with having a player that's really good in the pick and roll setting. So that's something that's a little bit smaller, right? People don't care too much about this, but this is when it gets kind of crazy. All right. This is when it gets a little bit crazy. He's also top 10 in matchup difficulty, right? And there's an explanation here. I won't play the whole thing, but there's an explanation here on what matchup difficulty is. We've been over it plenty of times. Actually, I'm not going to go over it at all. Okay. If you're interested, just go to B-Ball Index and watch this video. But it just talks about the overall how difficult it is of their matchup, and they talk about how they calculate that and how they come up with that statistic. And he is top 10. He's number 7 in the entire NBA. Once again, could have changed a little bit. This is from January 21st, but once again, assuming he's still in that top 10, right? It's right before All-Star break, not that far before All-Star break. And then you can jump over to perimeter isolation defense. Once again, Jeremy Sochan is top 10 in the NBA. In that, we're talking one of the best defenders in the NBA, period. I thought Steph Castle was on here. Oh, maybe he's only in matchup difficulty. All right, that's fine. And this came out today. I don't remember when I posted this. Came out yesterday. And this is super interesting. So this is the statistics of all of the all-star caliber players. Percentages going against Jeremy Sochan when Jeremy Sochan is guarding them. So a lot of these games, people will leave these games and say, well, he had 40 points. Sochan didn't do anything. No, you have to look at that player guarding that specific player, and you can see what came out of it. Anyway. So Paolo Banchero, 25%, Scotty Barnes, 25%, Julius Randle, 28%, Halliburton, 31%, LaMelo Ball, 33%. These percentages are horrible. SGA, 34%, Jalen Green, 34%. They can't score on him. He's very difficult to deal with. And if you want to try to tell me, well, what about offense? Well, you know what? I just gave you quite a bit of offensive stuff that I think is really good. And when you say that he can't shoot outside shots, right now, Sochan is shooting 34%. But defensively, let's not just ignore a whole half of what basketball is, okay? Defensively, this is what he's bringing to the table. Some of the best players in the NBA have an extraordinarily difficult time guarding him. I actually looked this up for this season because I had quite a few people trying to combat me on this. Like this comment here, explain to me why he's talking about Sochan, obviously. Explain to me why a non-shooter that's too small to guard bigs and too slow-footed to guard perimeter guards is being defended like he's Dennis Rodman reincarnated. And as you can see here, I gave just a few simple statistics. Very easy. Going against SGA, 18. This is this season, right? 18.2 field goal percentage. Julian Randle went 3 for 11. Luka Doncic went 5 for 15. Jalen Brunson went 2 for 6. And then Anthony Edwards went 8 for 22. So the whole notion too big to guard, too slow-footed to guard, perimeter guard, it's silly. This is just all fifis. This is not facts. All right? Get away from our feelings. Let's talk about facts. All right? So, statistically, that's what he's doing. And the reason why, I know that this is like probably exhausting and you're like, oh my God, dude, like you do this every time. But the reason why I'm bringing this up is because this type of stuff doesn't show up in the stat sheet. It's not going to show up in the stat sheet. He's not that type of player. He's not that type of player. Now, when it comes to Vassell, I completely understand when people are upset, okay? Because Vassell, his defense, it's okay. Like, he's a okay to good defender. Like, I think that he's slightly above average defender, right? But that's not what we're leaning on. We're leaning on Vassell's ability to shoot and score. So when he has a game where he scores very poorly, it obviously people are going to be upset. I don't go as far as to say Vassell just has no point being on this team and trade him and all. I don't go that far. But I do understand where people are coming from because that's what you're leaning on. It's going to show up in the stats. If Devin Vassell has a good game, more than likely, I would say 90, I'm just throwing a percentage out there. I would say 90% of the time it's going to show up in the stats, Devin Vassell's impact, because he's that type of player, right? But it's not going to for someone like Sochan. It's just not. It's too many intangibles. It's not. So you have to look at things like this. When you're questioning whether or not he's a good player, you have to look at this. Here's another one. Top 10 risers in old LeBron this season. So let's look up old LeBron. This is just the overall impact. Here we go. It's a metric of overall impact. So here we go. Old LeBron. Old LeBron is a metric used in basketball to evaluate a player's offensive impact. It's part of the LeBron metric, which assesses a player's overall impact on the court. So if you're wondering what it is, LeBron is Force acronym that uses box scores and on-off calculations to evaluate a player's impact. So if we go actually to the gosh darn thing, let's see here. Basketball Index is a great source, by the way. They do a really great job. They have all the calculations here. So if you're interested at all, you can look up exactly what old LeBron and D LeBron is. Actually, you don't even have to do that, to be honest with you, because they have I didn't realize they had it here. Okay. Wizard, I don't think so. You said Sochan is fine. He gets way too much hate, but he also gets too much praise from Clan. I don't think so. I don't think so at all. I think that he gets too much hate. And as far as I'm concerned, I never said, and if I did, it might have been like early rookie year that I was like, maybe. But I never said that I think Sochan is going to be a superstar player. You're not going to catch me saying that. I don't think that. I don't think that Sochan's going to be a superstar. Right? When I said that I think he could possibly be an all-star, I think that comes down to you're playing with Wemby, right? And a lot of players that play with superstar talent, just by virtue of playing with that superstar talent, and you're going into the playoffs and you're making runs, you could end up being in that conversation and you could, scrape by for an all-star appearance. But I do understand how difficult it is to become an all-star. So I don't think that. I don't think that he's going to be a superstar. But I do think, even if I say he's a role player, I think that he is essential to the Spurs going forward. Like, I think that he is an essential part of the San Antonio Spurs, and I think that a lot of teams could use someone like Sochan, right? I think he's very important. So I don't think I give him I don't think I give him too much praise, right? I think that because of all the hate, I don't think that people realize how good he actually is, and I want us to catch it now before we have to wait for the Spurs to be in the playoffs so people could finally see it. I want it to be right now for us to start to recognize it, get excited, and get ready, okay? We don't have to be miserable up to that point. We can be happy about what we got right now until we get to that point, right? That's how I feel. That's how I feel. We can be skeptical about the team or whatnot, which I am too. Like, obviously, I think we need more talent. All right, quite a bit more talent. But as it stands right now, there's a few players on this team that I think, yeah, we should be excited about. Why shouldn't we be excited about Sochan? He's like, what, 20, 21, 22? He just turned 22, I think. Or he's about to be 22. I always forget. But he's awesome. He's awesome. You guys did not tell me you couldn't hear this at all. I played like 13 seconds of it, and you heard none of it. Shame on you. This is not my fault. Shame on you guys. All right.
Taylor here from Basketball Index.
Jeez.
Today we're going to break down BBI's flagship stat, LeBron. LeBron is an all-in-one metric that stands for luck-adjusted player estimate using a box prior regularized on-off. Now that's a mouthful, but put simply, it estimates how many points better or worse a player is worth compared to league average per 100 possessions, with 0 being average. So in 2021, the Joker led the league in LeBron being worth almost 7 more points than league average. Drew Holiday had a top 25 impact on his way to a championship, and Tristan Thompson was essentially a league average player. Furthermore, it can be broken down into offensive and defensive LeBron to better understand where a player's value comes from. For example, Ben Simmons and CJ McCollum had almost identical LeBrons in 2021. However, Simmons' value came mostly on defense, and CJ's impact came on the offensive end. LeBron is a great stat to quickly ballpark a player's impact and provides so much context that the traditional box score is lacking, and does so while adjusting for lineup and opponent quality, small samples.
Did you hear that? Impact. Impact. It's a way of showing impact that gives you context, right? So when it comes to that, him being a riser or top 10 in the NBA as far as rising in that regard, shows his improvement and shows how good he actually is. Because if you just look at the stat sheet, you'll say, oh, he's averaging 11 points. That's not that good. Oh, he's averaging, blank, blank. That's not that good. But in reality, it actually is that good. When he says that you praise him too much, he might be just talking about the amount of videos on Sochan. I mean, we can go through my channel and see how many are actually Sochan. I mean, we post like 60 videos a month. I don't even think half of them are so. I don't think that at all. Maybe like 10%. We'll look though. We'll look. I could be completely off. All right, a few more. So I took a look at this. So this is from 3-Step Basketball, and I actually posted it here. So this is just the overall percentile of Jeremy Sochan compared to other players in the NBA, right? His peers. So his ball handling and true shooting percentage this season is ranked better than 69% of players in the NBA, scoring more than 78% of the NBA, rebounding 87% of the NBA, defense more than 92% of the NBA. And for context, I went ahead and also put up the players that he was drafted with, or a few of them. So you have Dyson Daniels. So he beats Dyson Daniels in all of these except ball handling. He beats Jabari Smith Jr. in all of these except defense. But I think the defense is also taken in regard your team as well, because they take into account your defensive rating as a team too. So it is a little screwed. I guess it is screwed. It's a little skewed a little bit. But better than Jalen Duren except rebounding. So everything in this category except rebounding. And then better than Keegan Murray in all of these percentiles. So I say all that to say this. Stuff like this is absolutely ridiculous, right? Coming across things like this is absolutely silly. So shout out to Jay for just laughing. But someone says, because Kai Jones did he just get released? Yeah, he just got waived. And Beck, how do you say this, guys? San Antonio people, how do you say this? I don't want to say it because everyone says I say it wrong. I'm not even going to say it. I'm not going to embarrass myself. But they posted Kai Jones over wait, Kai Jones. I'm so better than who? Okay, I have no. But Kai Jones over who? Anyways, he'd been an excellent pairing alongside Victor. Bigger Sochan that can actually shoot. Bear, okay. Bear County, thank you, San Antonio people. This is just nonsense, man. Absolute nonsense. The notion that Sochan, like I don't know where this is really coming from, other than his game just doesn't look pretty. The notion that Sochan can't shoot is just, I don't know what it's really based on. Like, yes, he's not shooting the best. Sure, I got you, right? But he's been improving every season. And that hasn't been asked of him this season to be like this outside shooting threat. It hasn't even hurt. Honestly, let me just be real with you, okay? Just watching these games, his inability to shoot 35, 40% and take like 4 threes a game hasn't even hurt us. Like, if I'm watching these games, a lot of times Sochan is getting his. He is scoring at an efficient rate. He is a legitimate threat. But the way that the Spurs have played, and they wanted to play, they don't have Sochan out there shooting a plethora of threes, and that's okay. Not every player on the team needs to be like Steph Curry. All I ask for Sochan, let me just be real with you. All I ask for Sochan is, if you're open, can you get to 35%? If you're open, right? And that's just key shots, the end of quarters, maybe even finishing games, right? Like, even we need a 3 in the fourth quarter here and there, you can really throw a team off because you might end up being open because they do not want Wembanyama to shoot a 3, so they might double team him or triple team him or whatever. Like, that's all I ask. Can you just hit him sometimes, right? That's it. That's all you really need from Sochan. You don't need him taking all these threes. I don't know where this notion came. Maybe it was Steph Curry. I don't know where this notion came from that every single player in basketball has to shoot a bunch of threes. That is not true. And even the threes that he has taken, he's shooting about 33%. I mean, he came into the league shooting 24. Like, where's the optimism here? It's just constant, someone who can actually shoot, someone who can actually shoot, someone who actually, and it's not just, I'm not just picking on that person. Lots of people do that. But yeah, those are my overall thoughts. All right. I just wanted to give Sochan some love because there's so many people that have not been doing it. And it's only after games like this where everyone wants to come out and say, oh, he's actually pretty good. He's been good. And when the Spurs lose, and statistically it looks like he didn't do much, right? He's still a good player. Don't forget that. He's still a good player. Jalen Duren. What about Jalen Duren? They have a really good team, by the way. Pistons are really scary. Future-wise, they are scary. Anyways, Clan, Sochan deserves the love all the time. He deserves the love, for sure. Right? He deserves the love. And it's kind of frustrating, especially when I look at a team that, let's be honest, been quite inconsistent. And the most consistent part of it has been Sochan's ability to get to the rim, Sochan's ability to play defense, his ability to communicate with teammates on the fly, his basketball IQ on both ends of the court. Very frustrating, right? Very frustrating that he doesn't get that love. And when I say basketball IQ, I'm sure there's plenty of people that's like, what basketball IQ, right? But it really does come down to that basketball IQ isn't just passing the ball really fancy, right? Basketball IQ isn't just the Chris Pauls of the world, right? Not just the Luka Doncic's of the world. Basketball IQ is also taking the right angles on defenders when you cut. That's not easy. If it was easy, every player would do it. Every player would be able to do it. But Sochan's one of the top in the NBA at doing it. So, that's all I got to say. All right, long segment, but I wanted it to be long. I don't care. His IQ and defense are brutally underrated. It's going to be like this. I'm going to tell you this, David. It's going to be like this, my friend, until we're in the playoffs. Like, once you're in the playoffs, everybody's going to be jumping on the bandwagon. Like, oh, he's actually good. It's only going to be then. I promise. I won't even say playoffs. When the Spurs are winning consistently, right? And that'll probably, I think that'll be next season. I think the Spurs are going to win quite a few games next season. When they're winning consistently, he'll get more praise. For sure. I don't know. Last question. Courtney says, you ever get that feeling where you don't care anymore when the same things keep happening? Courtney, are you okay? Like, is this like a deep question? Are you talking about like a relationship right now? I mean, yeah, I mean, I've been in relationships where like you kind of lose interest because it's like, oh my goodness, keep doing the same thing. Is that what you mean? All right. I'm talking about Spurs situation. What keeps happening that I would get tired of with the Spurs? Yeah, that's what I meant. I don't really know what's been happening. Like, the Spurs tanked like they should have, right? We got a superstar talent. Ended up getting a bunch of picks. I don't really feel like it's the same thing that keeps happening. And if it is the same thing, I mean, what, like 2 seasons? It would have to be mediocre. Like, for instance, I always bring this up, but like my Cowboys, right? My Dallas Cowboys. I'm tired of them. I don't care anymore. I don't watch any football at all. I don't watch them. I don't keep up with what's going on with them because none of it matters. But that took a while. Like, that was a while of mediocrity. That was years of it before I got to that point. With the Spurs, it's very promising, and I always like have something to look forward to for our future. So I'm not really like, yeah, there's nothing that I'm really, yeah. Courtney says, I'm a guy, thank you very much. I didn't know. I didn't know either. Courtney's it's a pretty gender neutral name. Anyways, no, I'm not tired of the Spurs. They're awesome.